Hi, folks. This is December 4, Friday, and this is the next installment of the Daily Word in the Crisis. I'm a post-war baby boomer born in the years following World War II. Every generation, as a generation, has a gift and a calling. Our parents were called the greatest generation because they fought and won World War II on two fronts. They banded together as a unified people and as a nation, and they defeated two powerful enemies. It was their gift to defend freedom and to build a post-war platform of prosperity for the generations to come. What came after that, however, was a culture of heavy conformity. And for people of color, it was a time of continued inequality, discrimination, and oppression. We all had to look the same, we had to dress the same, we had to have the same hairstyle, and more you couldn't think for yourself or you're going to be called a communist. We boomers rose up to say, no, things must change. It was our generation that brought about the end of Jim Crow laws in the South. It was our generation that fought for civil rights, our generation that fought for the end of the war in Vietnam. It was our generation that broke the mold and said no to conformity. In our youth, we protested the wrongness of the national crises we could see. Racism and the violence and hurt that came with it, the war in Vietnam, the oppression of a culture of conformity, the deadness and the routine in the churches. We fought for change, and we got it. And along the way, largely due to the war in Vietnam, we learned never to trust the government. It was our generation that revolutionized the music world with genres that had never existed before. It was our generation that forever changed the way church was done. The Jesus movement took flight, and hundreds of thousands of young people came to Jesus. The Christian world in America and other places has never been the same because of it. Contemporary Christian music was born. Out went the hymnals and the carefully scripted services. We bought guitars and we brought guitars and drums and a style of worship that our generation could relate to. It was a style that could reach masses of people. Creativity exploded. But just like Samson in the Bible, we allowed ourselves to be seduced by a cultural Delilah. We fell asleep on Delilah's knee as we pursued self-fulfillment and prosperity. We forgot the cross and the self-sacrificial ways of holiness it calls us to. We literally and figuratively cut our hair and abandoned our world-changing gift and calling as revolutionaries who changed things and who created new things. The vast majority of us found ourselves then blinded spiritually as Samson was blinded physically, walking in pointless circles of futility at the grinding wheel of life, just as Samson did at that literal wheel so long ago. Now, as we enter our closing years of life, our nation and our world cry out for us to rise up like Samson did, when at the end of his life he pulled down the pillars of the temple of Dagon on the heads of the Philistines, and did more damage in that last act than in all his previous life. Like Samson, we're called to do more damage to the kingdom of darkness in our latter years than in all of our previous years combined. We are a Samson generation. Hear the call. And our nation needs us now, desperately. It's time to wake up. It's time to turn to the Lord, and it's time to fight. The gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. Our generation might have laid those down, but they remain for us to pick up once more and fulfill the purpose for which God placed us on this earth in this particular period of history. Consider this. In our youth, we were awake and aware enough to know that something was terribly wrong with the war in Vietnam. We sensed it, we saw it, and we raised our voices in a chorus of no. No. We knew to question what we were being told. In our colleges and universities, we questioned what we were being taught on a variety of subjects, and we knew we were free to do it. We questioned and debated, and we learned. Why aren't we rising up now as a generation to question the narrative we're being fed about COVID-19, for instance? Why do we as a generation stand idly by and simply submit like sheep under a campaign of fear-mongering while the lockdowns and the closures destroy our economy, wreck small businesses, cause a dramatic rise in suicides, domestic violence, and drug abuse, and damage our children socially and educationally? Why do we not listen to highly placed dissenting voices that say the approach to this pandemic is wrong? Why are we as a generation not crying no to the destruction, manipulation, and abridging of our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms? In 1969, we wouldn't have stood for it. Why do we believe the government now when we refused to do so when we were young? Have they earned our trust? Well, don't tell me the government and its power-hungry politicians are more trustworthy or truthful today than they were back then. If you believe that, I can sell you my vegetable garden in Antarctica. Give you a great deal, too. As people have now stepped up before the legislative representatives in several states to give sworn affidavits of eyewitness accounts of corruption, fraud, and lawbreaking in the electoral vote counts, why would we simply sit by and believe the assertion that there was no widespread voter fraud? What happened to the generation that knew to question authority and demand answers? Yes, there have been mass demonstrations, and yes, some of us boomers have been part of it, but too few and not enough. Wake up, boomers. Come back to your first love. Come back to passion for Jesus. Come back to passion for soul winning. Come back to passion for truth. Come back to passion to set right what is clearly wrong. For my part, I live by the words of Caleb in Joshua 14, 9 through 11, who with Joshua was one of the only two to survive the 40 years in the wilderness and enter the promised land. It reads, "So Moses swore on that day, saying, 'Surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and to your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God fully. Now behold, the Lord has let me live, just as he spoke these 45 years, from the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses when Israel walked in the wilderness. And now behold, I am 85 years old today. I am still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so my strength is now for war and for going out and coming in.' And the key was, because you have followed the Lord my God fully." At 85, as strong for war and for going out and for coming in as he was 45 years prior. Wake up and rise up, boomers. Passion for Jesus, passion for justice, passion for righteousness, passion for holiness. Demand integrity of our government. Question the narrative. Stand for freedom. Don't walk in lockstep with all that we're being told. Pray, research, discern, and take a stand. Renew your passion, and if you're too tired to feel it, or you're waiting to feel it, then choose it. As Gandalf said to Theoden King in The Lord of the Rings, after he'd delivered Theoden from Saruman's spiritual possession, he said, "Perhaps your fingers would better remember their old strength if they grasped the hilt of your sword once more." Or King Aragorn, before the gates of Mordor, exhorting the army of the West, "The day may come when the hearts of men fail, and all bonds of fellowship are broken. But it is not this day. Today we fight." Well, if revival is going to come to our nation, and to the nations in general, it needs the SAMSON generation to be in the forefront. Some of us have awakened to that calling. At 69 years and counting, I've never been so alive, and others are there with me in my church, both young and old. I see some of our national Christian renewal and revival leaders who are part of my generation stepping up, more full of passion than at any point in their lives. Join us. Revive hope. Revive fire and passion. Re-engage. Go to war if you need to. It is a strategic time. And God bless you.